Before AI came along and stole the conversation about efficiency, there was automation and outsourcing. Both are alive and well, and they're getting better and better still. My guest today helps her private practice clients bring automation and outsourcing, both of them into their practices, and she's going to share some of her best tips with us. I'm Carl White, principal at Mark Advisory Group, which is a healthcare marketing agency, and I'm also the host of Practice Care. The mission for both is the same, and that's to help private practice owners stay private. Not only is that usually what they want, but care is better when the provider owns the practice because that's when they're going to have the most freedom to make the clinical decisions they think are best. It's just not always the same when somebody else owns the practice, whether it's a hospital, a health system, private equity, whoever it is, owners in faraway lands. Usually, eventually, their agenda starts to creep in. Let's keep it simple and keep it private. My guest today is Katie Nunn. Katie provides training and coaching for healthcare leaders and their organizations on process improvement, financial optimization, and cultural transformation. Leveraging extensive experience with financial and operational turnarounds, she's a valuable advisor for an organization experiencing rapid expansion or change. With over 20 years' experience in healthcare leadership, her broad areas of expertise include practice assessments, process improvement, financial management, IT implementations, telemedicine, strategic planning, providers onboarding, and cultural transformation. Katie, you got a lot going on, so thanks for carving some time out to come on Practice Care.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Carl. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely, thank you. And anybody who's listened to even a few episodes knows what the first question is. Very regimented here on Practice Care. That bio is short. There's a lot more to your story. So tell us more about you. Help us get to know you a bit better.
Sure. So I have spent my entire career in private practice management in some capacity. I worked in various different specialties, and you manage different sizes of practices as well. And then at some point in my career, I had been with a large group for 13 years and enjoyed it, but I just didn't feel like I could do that for another 20 years or 25 years. So I was looking for something a little different and had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. And so I decided to start my own consulting company and was just hopeful that I could, pay my own bills and make a living. And that was in September of 2019 that I quit my job and started my new company, not knowing that we were getting
What
ready
great
to all
timing.
get,
Yeah.
all get hit by
So if
the
you never quit, it
pandemic.
never would have happened, right? It's all on you.
Right, it's all my fault. I was the problem.
Yes.
So I started a consulting practice doing primarily private practice management, but it's we've creeped into other areas as well, just as far as like some startup companies like that are looking for assistance on how to do coding for their new technology and stuff like that. So it's been fun because it's become way more than I thought it would. But then one of my very first clients was a family medicine physician, and he had just started a medical practice, and we really got along well and had the same vision for like what healthcare should look like. And so we decided to partner. And so we both together, that's Dr. Shaw and I own a private medical practice and a private healthcare consulting company. So my healthcare consulting company is called Bright Ideas, and Bright Ideas is like the back office of Vital Care Family Practice. And we do run the business side of the family practice, but then we're also out working with other practices all over the country on anything that is on the business side of healthcare. And what I've learned since I started my company is that there's a lot of need out there because healthcare is hard, and the business of healthcare is tricky, right? Because you are always trying to make sure that you're taking care of your patients, but you have to make sure that you're managing your business well as well, or else you're not going to make it to be able to take care of those patients. So
yeah,
I love it because I'm not a clinician, but I still feel like I'm helping taking care of patients because we're making sure the place runs and everybody gets paid, and that we can do the things that our providers need to do. So that's kind of one of our missions, is like, let us help you with the business side so that as a clinician or a physician, you can do what you're good at.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, and it seems like, at least in my limited experience, my view of the world is that the business side primarily falls to like the practice manager or that side
Mhm.
of the house. And the practice managers I know from my clients, they're doing everything from billing to payroll to coding to fixing the toilet.
Yes,
And it's like,
absolutely.
how does any one person keep up with all that? So, but
Right.
the business side is vast. That's why practice care continues. And so
Yes.
you either staff it up or you find people on the outside who can, you know, who can supplement
Yeah,
like
exactly. And
us.
that's
So it's
a great like segue into what we're going to talk about today.
yeah,
Because it's
yeah.
like it's just impossible to be an expert in all the things you need to be an expert in if you are running a medical practice.
Hmm.
And the bigger you get, the more likely you are to be able to hire people that are experts in those certain areas. But that's we're talking really large practices,
Yeah.
and there's many practices out there that are less than 10 providers or less than
Hmm.
20 providers, and at that level, you're not going to have necessarily like a HIPAA compliance person that's only doing HIPAA compliance,
Right.
right? They're probably an office manager or something that dabbles in HIPAA compliance from time
Yeah.
to time, or
Yeah.
IT. And there's so many things that are require a really vast level of knowledge, but you can't afford to have somebody on staff that's all they do.
Right. It's not a full-time job for
Right,
anybody, but
right.
it's necessary for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, it might
S-
be a full-time job like one day or one week,
Correct. It's not a
depending
40
on,
hour
right.
continuous kind of sort of. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So then automation and outsourcing, and they're not the same thing. I think I want to start with, let's just make sure we're talking about, as we all listen and talk about this, when you say automation, what do you mean? When you say outsourcing, what do you mean?
Right. So automation is going to be, you know, things like, using your practice portal to eliminate phone calls, right? I mean, to me, that's a step towards automation.
Okay.
The patient is sending messages directly to the provider or to the provider's medical assistant. Then so you're skipping the step of having the patient make a phone call, and then somebody has to answer that phone call and has to take down the message, or
Hmm.
so that's like, a way to automate part of that process, right?
Hmm.
Um, Automation also, with like billing, there's a lot of automation happening in the billing world with AI, where, you have AI kind of looking at claims and adjusting claims and
Hmm.
flagging you to things that might be an issue. Claim scrubbing, that's,
Right.
we've had that for a long time, but with AI, it's getting more and more robust as far as what it can do. So those are like on the automation side of
Hmm.
things, and then outsourcing is like, we talked about IT and HIPAA compliance. I mean, those are two things that I think are beautiful for practices to outsource, because you need somebody that's going to be very well versed and have the expertise to do what you need them to do.
Hmm.
But you only need a small portion of that person. You don't
Right.
need them full time. So having a good HIPAA compliance company that whenever that does training for you on an annual basis, and then maybe for new employees.
Hmm.
And then when you have a problem, you pick up the phone and they're going to be there to walk you through it,
Right.
because there's going to come a time when you have some sort of a HIPAA thing. If you work in healthcare, it's inevitable.
Yeah.
Same thing with IT stuff, right? We all need to have a lifeline for that. And it's, practice has to get pretty big to be able to afford to have their IT in-house.
Hmm.
And even if you have your IT in-house, if it's just one guy, that is, a single point of failure, right? So
Yeah, it's
something
true.
happens to that guy, then what? So
Yeah.
that's the other side of outsourcing, is like, if you can't afford to have backup and redundancy in your office with that position, then looking at outsourcing is probably a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. So automation is a process can get done from step one to step final without a human doing anything, right?
Right, or at
It's
least
automated.
part,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
we have
sure.
such complicated processes in healthcare that,
Yeah.
even taking some of the steps out is,
Right.
can be automation.
Right.
So yes,
Yeah.
taking steps out or eliminating human interaction is automating. Outsourcing and is giving it to like another company that's
Right.
gonna take care of that for you.
Right. Okay. So then at a high level, when you think about automation and outsourcing, what are the biggest promises for a private practice of employing these high level? Because we'll get into some nitty gritty in a little bit,
Yeah.
but just what do you think?
So I kind of lump it into three categories for both really outsourcing and automation. Number one is expertise, right?
Okay.
When you're outsourcing, you're hiring expertise.
Hmm.
And so that's maybe expertise that you don't have, or it's something that you know you're going to have a hard time keeping up with.
Hmm.
Or, uh, you lost somebody that was your expert and now you don't have anybody. So that's what outsourcing often promises is like, let us take care of it. We're the experts.
Hmm.
The second thing is just efficiency. Um,
Yeah.
if that's something you do every single day, you're probably going to be better at it than somebody that dabbles in it once or twice a year.
Hmm.
And then the last thing is capacity. I mean, I think that many medical groups are like they don't have one seat left in the building that they could put another body,
Right.
And
Right.
so,
Even the closet's full. Yeah.
right, maybe you could do it, but you don't have anywhere to put these people. And, remote work has opened a lot of doors for that, and there's a lot of uh, things that have moved to be, work at home jobs and billing, like medical billing, for example, is a
Hmm.
great, work at home job, but it's still required. And that's one of the things that I say about outsourcing or automating is neither of these things are set it and forget it. You
Hmm.
have to manage it still, but managing an outsourced company or an automated process is probably going to be easier than managing the whole process internally. So,
Yeah.
but it's easy for people to think, well, I outsource that, so I don't ever have to think about it again. But, you know, companies fail too, like, or they might not be doing it the right way. So you have to still have a lot of oversight to whatever
Yes.
process you're managing or outsourcing. So those are kind of like that's the promise is like, we're going to do it better than you can. And
Hmm.
from a cost perspective, I wouldn't say that they necessarily are going to say that they're going to do it cheaper. Some places it might be cheaper to outsource. And we can talk about some specific examples of that. Sometimes it might be a little bit more expensive, but they might do it so much better
Hmm.
that it's worth that higher price tag. So
Yeah.
it just depends on what it is you're talking about. But
Yeah.
the promises are more likely that we have the expertise, we're more efficient, and we have the capacity to do it.
Yeah. And you made well, a lot of interesting points, but one of them, the idea of, you can sort of set it and forget it. You can delegate the responsibility to get something done, but you can't delegate your accountability,
Right,
right?
because
It's
it's still your
still
problem
it's
at the
still
end
your
of the
problem, it's
day.
still
Yeah.
your practice. So you
Yes.
can try it, but if it hits the fan, guess what? You're still going to be left holding it. The other thing on cost, I don't know what the numbers are, but sometimes I think of it as, um, you know, you don't have to pay a consultant fringe benefits. You don't have to
Hmm.
pay, you just pay the line item and that's that. You don't have to worry about, this is kind of overstating it, but since they're not a W-2 employee, you don't have to worry about how well how they're feeling today. Like
Right.
all the
There's
stuff that
like,
you should appropriately
absolutely.
care about with an employee. You
Yes.
don't, we're a line item.
Yes.
We're not intertwined.
Absolutely.
I'm oversimplifying it, but there's more flexibility.
Yeah, I couldn't
Labor
agree more.
laws don't always apply. It's easier.
It is. I mean, when like we do, one of the services that my company offers is billing, and so
Hmm.
like full revenue cycle management. And like we're really great for practices that are, they might have three or four billers if they were to bring it in-house, or even just one or two. But that's like we talked about earlier, if you have only one person doing the job, then if something happens to that person, where are you?
Hmm.
And yeah, employees, they call out sick, they leave, they, have childcare problems, they, I mean, so
They
it is,
gossip.
they
They're
gossip, they stir the
humans.
pot.
They're humans,
Yes,
right?
they're humans
It's yes.
and we love them, but that's just human nature. So if you're outsourced, that's not your problem anymore.
Hmm.
And the outsourced company is managing all that.
Right.
And like I said, remote work is great. Like our billing team, they all work remote. And that's billing is one of those things that lends itself well to remote work because
Hmm.
it's easy to tell if someone is working or not, but it
Hmm.
still requires management. So you've got to
Yeah.
be checking behind it and oversight and management. Like everything requires oversight and management.
Yeah.
But that is the billing company's responsibility, and then they should be bringing you monthly
Hmm.
data and statistics to show you how things are going.
Right.
I have seen a lot of billing companies that they're doing it, but they never give you any feedback. So the practice doesn't really know what's going on
Right.
inside they're like, well, this is how much we made this month, but I don't know where we are with denials. I don't know where we are with
Yeah.
aging. And so those are the kinds of things that you're going to want to see regularly from your outsourced provider, whatever it
Right.
is they're doing. You want to have communication.
Yeah. And it's so
Yeah.
much more flexible. Like, but let's imagine that you hired an outsourced, somebody, and they're stirring the pot, the water cooler is to, it's a lot easier to get rid of them, right? You don't
Yes.
have to call your employment attorney and wonder, how do I do
Right.
this? You just terminate the agreement,
You just
right?
cancel your
You
contract.
just cancel
Yes,
the
exactly.
contract. And so it's easy in, easy out. Yeah.
Yes.
Um, all right, we beat the dead horse. So one of the areas I like to get into is just mindset, right? Because on the one hand, there's a big promise: automation and outsourcing make things more efficient, make the practice run better. Some people embrace it, some do not.
Mhm.
Any kind of change. So, in your experience, how would you compare the practices that embrace automation and outsourcing versus those that resist it? What do you? And the reason I ask is that if we catch a listener's attention and they're like, you know what, Katie's right, we should go down this path. The biggest barrier you're going to find is yourself, if there's any at all. So
Yeah,
let's bring this stuff to the surface so that they can see it and get
right.
past it.
Yeah, so I think a really good example of that is like HIPAA compliant text messaging.
Mm,
Um, that's something that we have in our practice, and many practices still don't do that. Dental practices have embraced this for a long time,
mm,
and they've been really good at, like we've been sending text message reminders, like you remember your appointment is on
mm,
Tuesday. Like we've been doing that for a long time, but you usually can't reply to that message.
yeah.
And so now there are options out there where you can actually text back and forth with the patient.
Mm.
And let's face it, like people just don't really like talking to people anymore.
No, what is, yeah.
And so they just, or I shouldn't say all people, but the younger
But
generation,
yeah.
they really want to, like, if they can just text us and say, hey, can I get an appointment? Whatever that is that they need. Hey, I'm running late. Whatever they need to tell
Mm.
us, they can text us. And that has been a huge benefit. And then one of the things that I love about the texting is that you can also send the patient their bill via text message,
Oh.
because many people don't even like really check their mail anymore, because
Hmm.
the only thing that's in there is either bills or junk mail, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so being able to send it to them electronically that way has been a huge, and then they can just click a link right there and pay it. And that
Hmm.
has been a huge benefit for us. So you were saying though, practices that don't
Like the mindset
adopt.
of those who embrace versus those who
Yes.
resist. Let's say it
I
that way.
think that it's like the dinosaurs, like if you
Hmm.
can't adapt to change, then what's going to happen is that you're going to eventually become extinct because the patients are going to demand it. I mean, patients are becoming more um aware of their options, and they now you can search better for providers, and you can see the ones that are using technology. And
Hmm.
like if you're a millennial and you go to a practice that's like still very antiquated, they're going to be turned off.
Hmm.
They're not going to feel like that is a place that's going to take good care of their health, because they don't communicate in the ways that they like to talk to people,
Yeah.
or they see that it's very antiquated in your office and that you're still like mailing them paper statements, and they don't ever check their mail, so
Yeah.
they need a practice that is more technologically advanced.
Hmm.
So I think that you know and the other thing that I see happen with practices that don't try to keep up a little bit at a time, it's kind of like if you own a home and you defer all the maintenance and you don't take care of your home,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden it becomes a real nightmare because like maybe you want to put the house on the market, but and before you do that, you got to spend $30,000
Yeah.
to get it to a place where you need to sell it. If you're doing things a little bit at a time as you go, it's not nearly as expensive, or it's the sticker shock isn't there.
Yeah.
So, implement something new every year or two if you can't do a bunch of overhauls all at one time, but you
Hmm.
got to start trying to keep yourself relevant, right? So that
Hmm.
you're competing with other practices and you're also keeping your cost in control. I mean, inflation is a real thing that everybody's dealing with.
Yeah.
We used to be able to hire medical assistants for $15 an hour, and now you can't touch an MA for less than 20
Hmm.
in my market. It's probably worse in other places.
Mm.
And so that cost has to come somewhere because we're not getting paid more by the payers. So
Yeah.
you got to gain some efficiency somewhere, or else you're just going to be losing money for your whoever is your practice owners. They're the
Right.
ones that who's are going to wind up paying for that.
Got it. Now you said earlier, I just wanted to ask, you said that uh, interactive texting and particularly being able to send invoices through text, big deal,
Hmm.
big game changer. Did you like notice more collections, faster collections?
Yeah,
what was the
both.
game changer?
Yeah, and the other thing that they can do is fill out paperwork before, like through
Yeah.
text them the paperwork, they can fill it out and submit it, and it comes right back to us. So that is huge. So that takes out wait time.
Hmm.
Sometimes patients get to the office and they're like just in time for their appointment. Their appointment's at 11:30 and they get here at 11:30. When they have to fill out paperwork, maybe they
Yeah.
have a 20-minute slot. It's going to be half of that slot's going to get eaten up with
My paperwork. Yeah.
paperwork. So
Yeah.
if they can do it in advance, then that's all taken care of. They can even send us their insurance cards, a picture of their insurance cards, so we can have them ready to go.
Wow.
Um, and so that helps just from an efficiency standpoint. But then on the collection side, yes, I mean we saw an increase in collections and as far as how much we were collecting, as well as getting it in sooner, which
Hmm.
those things are dreams, right? Like if you have to wait to mail it, well, snail mail is called snail mail for a reason, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't feel like it's gotten any better since the pandemic.
No, still snail.
Right.
Yeah.
If not, it
Yeah.
doesn't even ever get there, right?
Yeah.
So then, but a text is almost instant, right? So they get there and you're saving, stamps are expensive, envelopes, all that stuff is expensive. So
Yeah. Yeah, one client, actually, no, a colleague who works with a lot of private practice owners, she was telling me that this is not automation or outsourcing, but they were really pushing hard to collect the copay when the patient comes
mhm.
because these $10 or $15 copays, it costs more than that to go collect it. And it gets to time stamps, envelopes,
Yeah.
effort. But a text is, a couple of pennies. I mean,
Yes,
right, with a
exactly.
link and yeah, so faster, cheaper,
Hmm.
great example.
Yes.
So okay, so let's get into it. Like some of your best tips. This could be tools you like, implementation, automation,
Yeah.
outsourcing. What are you seeing out there? What do you like?
So, from an outsourcing perspective, credentialing is one of the things that I think is um, great to be outsourced, as long as you outsource it with the right partner.
Yeah,
So payer credentialing is one of those things that somebody in the office maybe knows how to do it, but they don't do it often enough to feel like they're an expert at it. And
it's a
so
whole thing. It's like a lot
it's
of
a whole thing,
detail.
right?
Yeah, it's like anytime I say that, that's a whole thing. Why don't we just find somebody who knows what they're doing? That's
Yes,
my code
exactly.
for I don't think I should be doing this once a year. Yeah.
No, and it's
Yeah.
like, but it's also the backbone of revenue cycle management. So if your credentialing is not right, then your payments can get messed up.
Hmm.
And then if you're bringing on a new provider, that's when it really is, can be tough. It's like if maybe you haven't added a new provider in years. And so then all of a sudden you're like, okay, we got to get them credentialed. Well, who's going to do that? And who knows how? And But if you are somebody that does credentialing every day, then
Hmm.
that's a beautiful thing.
Hmm.
Outsource it. It's usually very relatively inexpensive.
Hmm.
And having the right partner that's going to do that credentialing for your practice in a efficient way could
Hmm.
be the difference between you starting to receive payments for that new provider on time or not. You know,
Yeah.
we do credentialing in my company, and we have rescued many people that have gotten with a bad company credentialing, or they've been trying to do it themselves,
Yeah.
and it's been 6 months and they've gotten nowhere. Well, that means it's 6 months that they've not getting paid for anything.
And it shouldn't take that long, right? If it's
No,
done
in 90
properly.
days,
So
if you
yeah.
know, if, I mean, it is always up, the payers are the in charge, so
Yeah.
it's kind of always up to them, but I always tell our clients it should take 90 days to get somebody fully credentialed. So
Hmm.
credentialing's definitely one of the top ones for something that you should outsource.
Hmm.
And then even if you're a really large practice, outsourcing credentialing can be a savings because we recently picked up a large cardiovascular practice in our community,
Hmm.
and they had two people that were doing credentialing for them, but one of them was like retiring, the other one, and they probably did other things around the office, but it really wasn't a two-person job. So we were able to, they were able to outsource it to us for much
Hmm.
cheaper than they had those two people.
Yeah.
And so it saved them money. So that's one of the things that I think is a great option for
Hmm.
outsourcing. Um, the other thing that is interesting, and I have in the past I've been a little bit skeptical of this, but we have recently started um, outsourcing some of our work to Pakistan,
To do
which
what?
so the things that we have started outsourcing are things like our fax box. Like, this is one of my pet peeves in healthcare, is that that's how we still communicate, is via
Yeah.
fax, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah.
it's like, if you want to get your medical records from one place to another, probably it's going to happen via fax. Like, it's going to be an electronic fax, but it's still a fax.
Yeah.
And so somebody in your office has to say, okay, I get this fax, and it's usually coming in an electronic format, but somebody still has to look at it and say, well, this is a CT scan that was done on Mr. White on this day, and get it into his chart the right way.
Hmm.
So it's not rocket science, but it's also like very necessary, because if that CT scan goes in the wrong person's chart, or if it gets labeled as a, pathology report instead of a CT scan, it
Right.
might not ever be found. So um, that's like one thing, and we have 20 providers in our practice, so we get hundreds and hundreds of faxes every day. And
Wow.
so it was one of those things that it was everybody's job to work the fax box, so it's
That
kind of
means it's
nobody's
nobody's
job,
job.
right?
Yes. Yes.
So we have recently outsourced that to a company that's called Hubcom, and they provide the connection to the Pakistan workforce, and they are this is like a coveted job in Pakistan, and so it's like a better job than many things that are available, and so they are very eager to do the job and do it well, and they, you know I have my mom is 80 and she's hard of hearing, and so talking to anybody that has an accent is hard for her, so I'm always very conscientious of the fact that accents can be hard, especially for the elderly population.
Hmm.
But right now they're not talking on the phone with anybody. They're just doing some of
Right.
the like repetitive menial tasks that are
They got to
so
get done,
have
but
to
they're
get
but they're
done.
not
Yeah.
$20 an hour. Yeah. You're talking about
Right. And so
like medical virtual assistants, right?
the
That
rate
world.
is like $13 an hour instead of
Hmm.
20. And you're not paying benefits
Hmm.
or worrying about call outs or anything. Like, that's the
Yeah.
other problem. Authorizations is another thing that they've just started helping us with, is like authorizations for procedures or for prescription medications.
Hmm.
Again, those are very repetitive tasks that take a really long time, especially if you have to call an insurance company. And so having like a virtual agent that can lift
Yeah.
that off of our team,
Yeah.
that's huge. And I can't I can't find anybody to work. I can't even hire my 16-year-old son to work for $13 an hour.
Yeah, I know. I know. We had a guest on a couple of years ago, Beth LaChance, and she runs a medical virtual assistant company. And we were
Yes.
talking about that. And I asked her at one point, I'm like, so, give me examples of tasks. And she said insurance verification,
Hmm.
scheduling and rescheduling. She didn't say
Yeah.
fax box, but probably.
Yeah.
And the training, the HIPAA training, the command of English.
Hmm.
A lot of this probably better than us old American borns, and
Right.
and very good at it,
Yeah.
and a well-run, good management and oversight, like it checked every box.
Right.
And I was like, yes, please, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
But
It's been
there's,
really great for us. And I've started now that we've used it inside our own practice, I feel comfortable telling other people about it. Like I don't, I like to you have done it
you want
myself.
to be the guinea pig? Yeah,
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 yeah.
I
Like
get
let
it.
me
Yeah,
be the test lab before I tell somebody to try it. And I just don't see that we can continue doing the things the same way that we've always done it, which is to have all of our own people doing everything
no.
as far as like those kinds of things go, because it's just there's, we're getting squeezed on both ends. The
Hmm.
payers want to pay us less, everything's more expensive, something's got to give.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
and it's also hard to find people that want to do those repetitive, mundane tasks.
Because that's what they are. I mean, after
Yes,
a while, you're like, oh, you see the
right.
pile when
Like
you
calm
walk
it
in, you
down.
go, I can't get far enough away from this, but I have to do it right now because that's the
Right,
job.
exactly.
What about on the automation side? What are some tools that you like? What are you seeing?
So I think that and whether this really counts as automation, but there are new things out there like remote patient monitoring. Remote patient monitoring isn't that not new anymore, but
The
it's
concept's
definitely,
not. Yeah.
yeah, but it's definitely evolving and getting more automated, and kind of
Hmm.
AI is going to get involved in RPM. But I do feel like the concept of, well, just remote patient monitoring is, being able to track and have insight into someone's like blood pressure or glucose meter
Hmm.
results or their away scale. And so it's a great tool for patients that have like uncontrolled hypertension, or they're diabetes, maybe they're newly diagnosed diabetics and they need a little bit more guidance, or
Yeah.
they have congestive heart failure, and so being able to know how much they weigh every day is a big deal. So it's a great tool, and I can see AI coming in on top of that to help
Hmm.
monitor it.
Hmm.
Um, and so, but it is somewhat automation, because what we used to do is see a patient for their uncontrolled hypertension and give them a new drug or whatever. And then we'll say, okay, we'll see you back in 6 months and
Hmm.
check your blood pressure again.
Hope it's good that day. Yeah,
Right,
right. That
exactly. And
random
so
day.
we're
Yeah.
making decisions on someone's, how to dose someone based off of one reading,
Hmm.
or maybe a couple readings. Or sometimes they'd send patients home with like a blood pressure diary, and they check it themselves and they write it down. But this is so in a way it is automating, because they're going to check their blood pressure and it's automatically going to come to the provider, and we
Hmm.
can see the trend over time.
Okay.
And so rather than relying on the patient to be a good historian, it's
Hmm.
automating that process,
Right.
because, patients are not always the best historians for their own healthcare.
You think? Yeah.
Right.
None of us are, right?
Right.
Yeah, we miss days, we editorialize, we don't like what we see. So yes,
Sure.
absolutely.
Right. Right.
Um,
Um, I think that, and then as far as like automating, this is like AI. Like I have been adopting AI on the business side,
hmm.
um, just for like simple things like letter writing,
Hmm.
like I had a client that needed me to write a letter. Like I remember this day so clearly, because I was like, oh, how am I going to pull this off? Because it was a physician called me, said, I need a letter today to, this health system to tell them that we're canceling our contract and blah, blah, blah. And it was like, okay, I mean, that's certainly something I'm capable of doing, but my day's already like full. So I'm not sure
Hmm.
when I'm going to have time to sit down and really well thought out letter
Hmm.
about this topic because it's this kind of a big deal.
Hmm.
And so I was like, I'm gonna try Chat GPT and see how it does. I gave Chat GPT a few of the parameters that I
Hmm.
needed in that letter, and it wrote such a beautiful letter that I was like, I'm
I've
never
heard
writing a
this.
letter again.
Yeah, I've heard this about fighting back insurance companies,
Yes, yes, like
all sorts
denial
of,
letters.
right,
Yes.
right, right.
It just it's not I mean it writes really well and you have to edit it to make sure that it,
Sure.
is not saying something you don't want it to say, but it's just the speed in which it does it. I mean, I can't even type that fast,
I
even
know,
if I
right?
could think that
I
fast as
know.
far as
I
what all
know.
I wanted it to say. But I
I
was
know.
like, I was, my mind was blown, and I thought, well, I wish I had this when I was in college.
I know. Well, separate podcast episode. Yeah.
Right.
But it's easier to edit something than stare at a blank sheet of paper and say, what am I going to write?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
So
AI, so that's one area. You mentioned the text. Are any other areas where you think, automation's really been, whether it's
So,
on
I
the
mean, I
clinical
think we
side, the
have some
business
like,
side,
I think we have some oldies but goodies
Hmm.
too. Like practice, like patient portals.
Hmm.
There's still a lot of practices out there that fight having a patient portal or fight having the patients have the ability to schedule themselves on that
Mm,
patient portal. Maybe they'll let them use it to correspond back and forth. But I think that we have to get used to not like letting patients have access to be able to schedule appointments, even if you only give them limited access. It's a
yeah.
control thing,
Is it? You knew the question I was going to ask is what's
yeah,
the
why
basis?
don't they
Why are
want
they
to do
fighting it?
that?
Yeah.
They're just very, providers tend to be very protective and particular about their schedules. And I think that they just fear
Yeah.
that it's going to get messed up somehow. But that is an automation that would save a ton of, I mean, phone calls, like the number of phone calls. We heavily use our portal,
Okay.
our patient portal, heavily for prescription refills, appointment requests, questions to the providers. I mean, there's a lot of things that are viewing test results, so
Mm-hmm.
we push our patient portal. We ask everybody that comes in to sign up for the patient portal because that's our
Mm-hmm.
preferred way to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
Our patient portal went down a couple years ago, and it was like during a snowstorm, so our staff was all gone too, and we realized that that patient portal was at least one full-time employee. I mean,
Wow.
because the phone calls, I mean, we couldn't even keep up.
Yeah.
So that is like, we've had patient portals for a
Mm-hmm.
decade now, but there are still a lot of practices that are scared to use it to its full potential. And
Mm-hmm.
that is definitely like, if you're not doing that, you got to start looking at how to use that patient portal more effectively.
Yeah.
Or maybe your patient portal sucks too, right? Like there's
Yeah.
a lot of them out there that are just not good. They don't do a good job. And so it's time to look at something else,
Mm-hmm.
because it can really do a lot for your practice.
Okay. Okay. Um, This is cool. I mean, when I was asking about tools and everything, we could have a series of episodes on that. But
Yes.
in the interest of kind of, bite-sized episodes, I want to
Yeah.
bring us home. So the first of two questions that I ask every guest is, in the context of what we're talking about, is there anything you think I should have asked you, but I just didn't think to ask you?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, the, um, yeah, I think that it's just a matter of, um, kind of looking at your current environment
Hmm.
and thinking about what are the things that drag us down every day?
Mm,
And then what are options for that as far
hmm.
as how can we do it better if we were to outsource or automate it?
Right. Or just do it
Um,
differently. Yeah.
yeah, just do it differently. Sometimes, and like one of the things that we do as a consulting service is a practice assessment. And we just come in and look at your practice from top to bottom and we give feedback. I equate it to like having a physical exam,
Hmm.
right? We should all do that every year. And it's how your doctor gets to know you and gets to figure out like, what are your health problems? What do we need to do? And it's not because you're sick. A lot of times patients wait to go to the doctor until when they're sick,
Yeah.
but you should go to the doctor at least once a year when you're healthy too, so that you can get a baseline of everything. And
Right.
that's the same with your medical practice, right? It's like have a baseline uh, practice assessment so that you kind of know where your pain points are and how you compare to other practices, right? Because most
Yeah.
of us really only know what's going on in our own practice, and we don't have time to be knowing what the trends are out there. So,
Right. Right. Which goes right into the next question is, imagine we've caught the attention of some listeners and they're saying, you know what, Katie's right. We need to get going on this or restart it or get better at it. But sometimes people get, even when they're enthusiastic about something, they get stuck at the starting line. They get paralyzed. Where do I start?
right.
So where would you recommend? Just some ideas. I mean, I've got one or two, but go ahead.
Yeah, so it's reaching out. I love to reach out to my fellow practice administrators that I
Hmm.
know around town and be like, "Hey, what are you doing for this? What are you doing for that?" Because a lot of times that's where you get great ideas. And
Hmm.
many practice administrators are happy to share because they're not competing. It's
Hmm.
just they're another specialty or whatever. So I think that asking your friends is a great place to start.
Hmm.
And then just looking at different companies. I always like to look at several different companies if you're outsourcing or automating, and making sure that it's going to be a good relationship. And then the last thing is just to remember that it's still going to require oversight, and you can't just
Hmm.
like set it and forget it. That's the kiss of death for
Yeah.
automating or outsourcing, is like thinking that once you get it up and running, it's just gone. It's not, it's still your responsibility. And you don't want to micromanage your outsourced company or your automated company, but you want to make sure that you're having regular conversations,
Yeah.
monthly at least.
Yeah. Yeah. When I think of it, I think I'll just take them one at a time. Automation. Where would I start with automation? Some of the best advice I ever heard is probably some of the tools and softwares that you use in your practice right now have added some
Yes.
automations. Go
Yes.
digging. Just go see what they do. There's probably some rationale for why they do that, whatever it is, and see if that might make a difference. And even if you don't feel any particular pain in what that does compared to how you're doing it, um, you know, think about it
Yeah,
because if it can make things more efficient, why wait till you're in a lot of pain? Sometimes that's
absolutely.
how life works, but why do that? So that's one thing. And
And
then, oh, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say one of the great places to learn about, what your software does that you don't know about is like going to their annual meetings.
Or bring their
And
rep in. Yeah, just say,
yes,
just give me a
and they're
tour.
showing you all the stuff. And like we use eClinicalWorks is
Mhm.
launching this new AI that's built into the EMR that's supposed to be kind of do the documentation for the provider. We're
Mhm.
kind of in line to get it there, with a slow rollout process, but I can't wait to see what that's like because they've
Yeah.
priced it well. And documentation burden is like the main driver of burnout in healthcare providers. And so if
Mm.
there's a way for us to make that better and get notes closed sooner and have it be less of a burnout risk for
Yeah.
providers, that's great.
Yeah.
So going to and if you can't get to the like annual meeting that they do, just call them up and say, hey, what's new, what are you
They've got
offering?
somebody who can give you a tour on a Zoom or
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
yeah.
It's really easy.
Right.
Yeah.
And they want to do that because those things often cost money, but it might save you money in the long run too. So,
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And another thing with automation is anything any repetitive task that just the way you described it before, it's got to get done. So it's important, but it's just sort
Hmm.
of, it's purely administrative. Um, think about it. It
Hmm.
could be maybe there's a way to automate it, maybe there's a way to outsource it.
Yes.
Um, and the other thing with outsourcing is, credentialing is a great example. If there's something that's important that you do only occasionally,
Hmm.
man, oh man, like, the chance for error is high when you don't
Oh,
do
yeah.
something. So just recognize that basic human fact and think about, is there a different way? Because probably the person that you tag to do that 3 times a year is like, oh,
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
They're
nobody's
like,
happy about it, right?
no,
So, and you're just
exactly.
taking that person away from, I mean,
Right. Well, that's like us with our fax box. Just the other day, I sent out a Teams message. We've been using the Hubcom for a couple months now, and I sent a message out to the whole team and said, "Hey, anybody missing doing the fax box?"
right.
And they were
When
all
I
like,
say
"Is this a
fax box,
trick
what do you think
question?"
of? Oh God, no. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those things that you don't miss it, but
Hmm.
very glad to have it be taken care of and have
Hmm.
it, be done right and
Yeah.
don't miss doing it at all.
Yeah. And then one other thing, it's not the quickest or easiest, but you can get a lot is pick a couple of patients who you look at their profile and say, man, if we had a lot more patients who looked like this, we'd be really, really happy. And just ask them, how could we serve you better? Like the
Yeah.
clinical side, maybe that's separate, but like just how this place runs. Where do
Yep.
you think we do really, really well? And where do you just look at it and you go, oh, why can't they do blah better? Just
Yes.
tell us.
Right.
Because you could stare at your practice and you're so deep in the weeds and go, I don't know. I mean, I want to get
Yes.
better. I don't know where to start. It all seems, but the people you'd like, and not just any patient, right? You got to pick the patients specifically where you say, if we had more who look like him or her or them,
Hmm.
we would be so happy. And
Yeah.
ask
Yeah.
them, just anything jump out at you where you just, you know, whatever it might be, I have to wait on the phone all the time. Okay. I don't know what I'm gonna do about it, but thank you.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Exactly. Get some
or
feedback
yeah,
from your, yeah.
yeah, like I hate the paper or
And
whatever it is.
I think that the other thing that you have, if you're gonna try to start doing some outsourcing or automating, and if you're a practice administrator or a practice manager, one of the things that you have to become really good at is how to sell your providers
Mm,
on this is going to be good because providers, they're trained to find the problems. And
hmm.
so they're going to find all the problems with your solution before you even launch it,
Hmm. Hmm.
So you have to be really good at presenting, this is what we want to do. This is how it's going to work. This is how it's going to cost, or this is how
Hmm.
much it's going to save. You have to really be able to line that out, explain it well in
Hmm.
order to get it passed through. So that's a huge thing is you have to make sure that you're pitching it really well. I learned that when I worked in the big practice I worked, I had 32 bosses, right? 32 physician
Jesus.
owners. And so
It's
I
not
had
even
to,
an odd number where they can vote. It's like it could be a tie at the end of
right.
all that work. 16,
No, it's like,
16.
so you have to you almost have to do lobbying before the big meeting and get people on board. And it's a process to get because like I said, their brains work in a way that they're trained to find problems and
Yeah.
to diagnose, right? So
Yeah.
you have to make sure that you have all those bases covered and you can't just be like, hey, I was thinking about outsourcing to Pakistan. What do you think? They're going to be like, heck no.
Why would we context, please?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. But
So
if you said we're thinking of outsourcing and I have good reason to believe our patients will be happier and or I think we're gonna it's gonna
save
make
a
us
ton of
cost, it's gonna
money.
save some
Yes,
money.
right. Or yes,
Or
so
when
start off,
so and so is retiring in 3 months, we don't necessarily have to replace so and so with another so and so. We could
yes,
reconfigure things and
right. Yeah, because they don't
interesting.
want to see people losing jobs either.
Yeah.
But rather than replacing, or rather, maybe you're losing people through attrition,
Right.
or you maybe, gotten busier, you need to add somebody rather than, that's the way we've done it. I've never, like laid off a whole department or something and brought in a third party.
Right.
It's more of instead of adding, let's do this. But
Right.
yes, going to them with data, like maybe you show them your wait times. If you were,
Hmm.
on your call center, if you're gonna
Hmm.
have, outsourced or some
Hmm.
additional help in the call center, show them their wait times. Show them how many faxes we get every day.
Hmm.
They don't know. They
Hmm.
don't work the fax box.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they don't know how painful it is. So you really
Right.
have to outline that in a really clear and concise way so that they understand and it makes sense. So
Right.
I think
Right.
that's very important because otherwise you just get shot down and then you get frustrated and you never want to offer anything else again.
Right, right, right. Cool. Katie, thank you. I really wanted to
Yeah,
do this topic. I mean, for the biggest reason is just like I said at the beginning, I don't want AI to steal the show of efficiency or of
right.
outsourcing and automation, right? Yes, AI can help them, but there's a whole part of those worlds where AI just isn't relevant, which is fine. But sometimes we can get onto the next piece of eye candy and forget all the good stuff that's still around us. And so,
Yep.
it's these are still viable tools that continue to get better as well. So
Yes,
thank you for coming on
absolutely.
and
It's great.
reintroducing us to this topic. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was
Yeah.
good. Good talk.
Yeah. And so, Katie Nunn, Bright Ideas Medical Consulting, you gave us contact information we're going to put in the show notes to your episode. So now
Awesome.
somebody has another way to get hold of you.
Perfect.
A couple of points before we wrap up. First, if you're someone like Katie or I, and we serve private practice owners, or if you're a private practice owner yourself, either way, you've got some experience on the business side of private practice. We really want you to come on Practice Care and tell the world about it. In the show notes for Katie's episode and every episode, there's a link. Couple of questions. It's really quick. Just tell us what's on your mind so we can get you scheduled as soon as possible. And finally, please subscribe to Practice Care if you haven't done so yet. We're on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, pretty much everywhere. We do a new episode every week, and the easiest way to stay up to date is to subscribe. So please do so right away. Thanks very much, and until next time.